Hello, dear friends. Patrick here again. Beautiful August day in 2024. Today we're covering part 6, which is chapter 6, called Missing Link. What do you mean missing? Now, this chapter is 34 pages long. It's very, very filled with a ton of detail, and it would take me hours to analyze this chapter fully. So I apologize. It's going to have to be an abbreviated video to show you what's going on here in chapter 6. And let's just recap a little bit where we just arrived from chapter 5. Right at the end of chapter 5, he says that some animals are, he calls, inconsiderate enough not to evolve at all, on page 141. So he admits that some animals don't evolve at all. And in particular, he's talking about these clams that they found fossils of, hundreds of millions of years ago, apparently, by their dating methods, which he's already said are not that accurate to any type of calibration, a degree. Or maybe it's 1 million years, maybe it's 2 million. Anyway, so these clams do not evolve. Some animals evolve at different rates, and some don't evolve at all. So he says evolution is a fact. And yet he admits on page 141 that some animals, species, don't evolve. How can you have it both ways? That's as far as we've gotten so far. And this is from somebody who compared creationists to Holocaust deniers. What kind of sick individual would make that comparison? It's insulting not only to the people that went through horrible tragedies or related to people that went through horrible tragedies, but it's also insulting to people that use common sense and say, clams don't evolve. So where's your theory? How do you know that humans don't evolve? There's no. But if it was the other way around, if creationists were making such a outlandish comparison to people that believe in evolution as being equal to people that don't believe in this historical tragedy, they would be banned off the face of the earth and instantly. Their books, anything they've written would never get published. But, Richard Dawkins gets a pass. Why? Because he's an atheist, because he's an anti-Christian. So, that's fine. He can go ahead and say whatever he wants, right? It's a crime of what he said in the first chapter, making that comparison, and he owes a lot of people an apology. But let's just leave that for now. That's for him to deal with. So chapter 6, missing link. What do you mean missing link, right? So the first word at the beginning of the chapter. What's the first word? Can you guess? Creationists. See, this is not Richard Attenborough. This is not, oh, look at the beauty of nature and look at how evolution works from an academic standpoint. He pretends it is with his biobabble, but it's not. It's simply his repetitive reinforcing of his own argument against creationists. The creationists might say, well, evolution doesn't happen in clams. Yes, it does. Remember that character from Saturday Night Live who was representing the tobacco industry, and they said, well, it's been proven that tobacco causes lung cancer. And he said, no, it doesn't. No, it doesn't. That's what Richard Dawkins is, right? At every turn, they say there's no in between, missing links between a human and a chimpanzee or a human and a fish. And Dawkins would say, yes, there is. Yes, there is. There's many of them. Oh, there's lots of them. Look at this one. And he shows some of his examples of missing links in this book. So he says, creationists are deeply enamored of the fossil record because they have been taught by each other. Says who? He makes it up, right? He makes up this conspiracy theory against creationists that they fondly, very fondly, his maliciousness in how he describes creationists is always at the forefront, right? He says these gaps are an embarrassment to evolutionists. They are. And he tries to say, oh, there's lots of in between. So I'm not going to get too much into the biobabble because it just goes on and on and on. And like I said, I'd be here for hours trying to go through and debunk all his statements. He says that on page 152, every one of the millions of species of animals share an ancestor with every other one. Every one of the millions of species of animals share an ancestor with every other one. So he says that every single animal he doesn't leave himself any outs. He doesn't say, well, there's different lineages of species that may have evolved from different parts of the earth at different times. No, it just says they all had to come from the same. He's hyper evolutionist, right? And so he makes that bold statement on 152. I don't know why he even needs to do that, but that's how he wants to think. He says on 155, evolution not only is a gradual process, as a matter of fact, it has to be gradual if it is to do any explanatory work. Huge leaps in a single generation, which is what a monkey giving birth to a human would be, are almost as unlikely as divine creation, and are ruled out for the same reason, too statistically improbable. The straw man argument is stupid. It doesn't make any sense. The whole statement structure is wrong, and he still can't explain how a caterpillar turns into a butterfly with his evolutionary theories. I'm going to skip over a lot of this notes from chapter 6 because it's just mostly biobabble. He says on page 161, if you go back far enough, everything lived in the sea. Watery, salty alma mater of all life. At various points in evolutionary history, enterprising individuals from many different animal groups moved out onto the land, sometimes eventually to the most parched deserts, taking their own private seawater with them in blood and cellular fluids. That's just rubbish. Stupid, ridiculous. So some animals came out of the sea and even went and lived in the desert and brought their own seawater with them. Okay, Richard. Yeah, that's as probable as creation. Yeah, amazing. Good job. Yeah, you're thinking smart there, bye. Good job. And we'll go through all this biobabble that tortures the reader with nonsense. And then he finds, some of these missing links. These researchers went to the Canadian Arctic because they had this idea, well, probably there's some missing links in the Canadian Arctic. And lo and behold, they go to the Canadian Arctic. And what do they find? A missing link. Well, do you think their presupposed assumptions had anything to do with it? Like Leakey going to the middle of Africa and say, oh, there must have been skeletons here. But yeah, he finds a fragment of bone. Oh, we found a missing link. Similar kind of thing, right? And they find this thing, and they said they struck zoological gold. They call it Tiktaalik. Tiktaalik sounds like where my dad used to work in Tuktoyaktuk in northern Canada. Anyway, a name never to be forgotten. Never to be forgotten? Yeah, well, nobody knows about it, so I guess that works. Comes from an Inuit word for a large freshwater fish. Okay. And he says here, when he saw it, he says, the lifelong zoologist, listen to this statement, how hilarious this is and how over-the-top ridiculous it is. He says, on page 169, perhaps my inner, here we go, after its discovery, when he sees this Tiktaalik, the lifelong zoologist in me, or perhaps my inner fish, was moved to speechlessness. Through rose-tinted spectacles, I imagined I was gazing upon the face of my direct ancestor. What a fucking moron to say such a thing. He looks at a fish and he goes, oh, I'm speechless. That must be my early ancestor. Good thinking, Richard. Yeah, that's good. Okay, so he found his missing link in this fish from the Arctic, at least one of them, because he's found many of them, he says. He's found all kinds of missing links. He says some animals returned from land back to the water again, and some came out of the water. They evolved for a while on land, and then they went back again. He talks about maybe some dolphins, and then the whales were hippos, and hippos were pigs, and he's got this, wonderfully ridiculous chart of all these creatures that are cousins of each other, from hippopotamus down to orca whales, and it's all biobabble. It's just totally retarded. He says maybe the limbs appeared, they evolved out limbs to walk on land, but then maybe they turned back again into fins and went back into the water. So there's backwards evolution too, right? Not only is there evolution, but there's backwards evolution, and there's convergent evolution and coevolution, and he's got all these variants of evolution to explain, whatever he can, grasping at straws, to say the least, right? Then he goes on to say molecular evidence. He mentions molecular evidence so many times in this book and never gives any molecular evidence, so there's that. But anyway, pardon me, I'm just going to have a little sip of java. Pardon me. Okay, let's get through this. How are we doing for time? Ah, I'm out of time. Okay, 10 minutes. Let's get this going here. As I said, this could go on and on and on. Probably lived like a hippo, may or may not be the actual ancestor of modern manatees, but it's certainly excellent casting for the role. Missing link gibberish. Pugila neatly straddles the gap between land and water in the ancestry of pinnipeds. It is yet another delightful addition to our growing list of links that are no longer missing. That's his missing link that he's got here, these skeletons. One of them has feet and the other one doesn't, right? So he says, oh, that's a missing link between those two. Retarded. He makes fun of creationists, calls them creationist zealots. What's the difference? He's an evolutionary zealot, right? He's got evolution to answer for everything. It's interesting that he says that he includes these pictures of embryos, and he has this one G that he says looks like a fish. I'm not going to show it to you because it's a kind of a gross image in the glossy parts of the pages, but it doesn't look anything like a fish at all. At all. A human embryo never looks like a fish, period. He says, oh, that looks like a fish, that little squiggle there. Take an image of a tiny zygote that's starting to develop and turn it in a number of different ways. You'll see a hippo, a fish, an alligator, a dragon, a butterfly, whatever you want to make out of it, because it hasn't formed anything yet. But as soon as it starts to form, there's no image of a fish at all. No gills, no fins, no nothing like that. And his pictures prove it. There's no image of a fish on any of these pages. I'll briefly show you. It's like I said, you don't want to look at that. It's just horrendous, stupid that he would include that. I'm sorry. Maybe I should just delete that image right out of there. But whatever it is. Let's see here. The most surprising achievements of evolution. See, he doesn't say anything achievements about God. When he marvels at something in nature, he says, wow, what an amazing achievement of evolution. But he doesn't have the fortitude, the sensibility to say, look at God's creation, because he's never experienced God. Maybe later in this video series, I'll share with you why I am so zealous for a creator, because I've experienced a creator in a very personal way that I normally wouldn't share with anybody. And there's a lot to that story, but let's leave that for now. And I wouldn't wish disbelief upon anybody, even Richard Dawkins. I pray to God that guy somehow comes to his senses before he has to leave the earth and face what I faced. That's a scary thing to fall into the hands of the living God. Let me tell you, you don't want to go there. You do not want to go there. Forget about even talking about evil or the absence of God. That horrific darkness that shows absolutely no mercy. I'm not even talking about that. I'm talking about facing God. People think this big friendly guy in the sky who's a psychopath because he told the Israelites to kill people. No, it's not like that. It's not like that at all. It's so overwhelming, so incredibly overwhelming. But like I said, maybe we'll deal that at another time. But I honestly don't wish any bad circumstances upon Richard Dawkins at all. I'm fighting against what he's trying to teach people and what he has taught so many people, and has shipwrecked their faith, stripped them from any recognition, acknowledgement, or appreciation of our divine creator who loves us and cares about his creation with his stupid, ridiculous theory. And it is just a theory. He keeps saying, oh, it's not a theory. If you call it a theory, you're not a serious person. You're a denier if you call it a theory. It's not a theory anymore. It's a fact, right? He keeps shouting that out in this book here. It's a fact. Second migration from water to land. There he goes again, saying, oh, they came out of the water, then they went back into the water. And he's got a footnote here talking about some Greek story. He tries to be funny, and it just ends up being cringe. And all his attempts at humor, none of them I find even clever or humorous. They're just cringy, but he does that often. So he does these evolutionary gymnastics about coming out of the water, back to the water, and talking about how wonderful natural selection is and all that kind of stuff. So that's all I'm going to say, because I've run out of time for chapter 6. Like I said, I could go on more into detail, but it is full of biobabble, and he has done more to convince me how lame evolutionary theory is at this point of the book, covering chapters 1 to 6, than before I read it, right? So there you go. Thanks, Richard. You're strengthening my creationist viewpoint so far. Let's see how he does for the rest of the book. So we'll move on to chapter 7 in the next video. Thanks a lot for watching. God bless you. We'll talk to you again real soon. Spend time with people you love and enjoy the beautiful weather. Take care of yourself. Bye for now.